Hey everyone, we are going to talk about project management today. So we are going to create a structure here for tasks, subtasks, and also we are going to show you how to create different kinds of budgets for your projects. So something that it's really common on different uh, project management tools is that you can have easily manage your tasks, but then it becomes a pain when you need to add more complex layers to your project. So budgeting or even comparing what you have planned with what you actually spend during the project and so on. So here, given that Gesture is a no-code platform, you have the flexibility to just add more tools, create rules that apply maybe only for one type of project. And we are going to use here also a new block that we have, a new part of a block. Actually, it's inside the table block for apps that we are going to show how to use this and how useful it could be to actually connect information and not only having, for example, items and sub items, but having sub items that are actually connected records. There's a difference there, and most tools only consider uh, records as sub items or sub records, but they are not in fact connected. So here I'm going to show the structure that's actually connecting this data, and this is better because it's first it's the better way to manage your data, but also it's much better for automations, for adding information or any other type of data visualization, or even to organize different kinds of tables or data in one project, for example. So I believe that's the idea for the live today, right, Nakanakari?
Exactly. So the idea here is that, like you said, it's very common for other tools to have the item and sub-item structure, right? So usually, if you're going to use a tool that's for project management or task management, you have the structure of task and subtask or something like that, and that's very useful. That's a kind of information that it's very convenient to have it layered that way. But the problem is that usually other tools won't allow you to have more than one type of sub item. So you can have tasks and subtasks, but you cannot have another layer that's not exactly a task. It's some other kind of information. And then what you have to do is have separate dashboards or separate tables that don't connect as well as they should. And then all the information is all over the place, and this is very bad for project management, at least from a standpoint of looking at the data and immediately knowing what's happening there. So the way that Jasper solves this, and this is a very interesting tool that we've just released, is that you can now, through the table component, um, get information from connected tables and display it all at once using this sub-item type of view, but pulling information from more than one place. So what do I mean by that? So if you look at the screen that I'm sharing right now, I'm going to collapse this. There you go. So what we have here is a dashboard for project management. This is a project planning app in which you have information, as you can see here, of budget. So if we look at the table, we have the project, we have the name of the project, we have the budget of the project, the total costs, the status, and if it's a favorite or not. I'm going to explain a little bit later of everything that's going on here. But the thing that you usually wouldn't be able to do in other tools is have two additional layers of information here. So what do I mean by that? So we have here the project, and we have expenses assigned to the project. So let's look at the tables. Here you go. These are the projects. So you can see that it's the same information from the app. This is the database. So it's kind of like the same information just directly on the database. So we have the title, the budget, and so on. And what's actually happening behind the app is that we have another table, which is the expenses table, and you can see that the expense has a title. It's connected to a project, so you can see that it's connecting to these projects here. You can see that it's the same name, and I can click on it, and it will show information from that project. We have a field for date, a field for amounts, and we're pulling the information of the status of the project. This is going to be used later on. So you can see that this is a different table in which we have all the expenses. Each expense is always connected. It's always pointed to a project. And you can see that we have multiple expenses here. And what we have here in the project database is a roll-up field which is summing up all of the expenses, right? So if we look at the end of year party, if we look at the expenses, we have this one, it's for $2,000. If we look at this one, conference room rental, it's for $3,000, foods and drinks, $500. If we sum all of this, it's going to amount to $5,500. So this is what's happening here, right? So we have a field for the total of expenses. It's a automatic sum here. Cool. So we have this layer of information, but also we have another table for tasks. So I don't want only to manage projects regarding costs, right? So I want to have budget for projects. I want to have a easy way to look at all the costs and the budget and so on. But I also want to have specific tasks for those same projects, right? So you can see here that for the end of year party, we have this task, which is find an awesome DJ. We have owners. We have a checklist of it's a to-do list of like subtasks here.
One
We
thing
have
that's
field for
important that there's a differentiation between the task and the field to do, because in this case you can have different models for the to dos. So it could be just uh, free to dos. So like it could be different to dos for each project. So you can just create during a meeting, or maybe you are visiting a client or something. You can create these to dos for later, and it's less structured, and you have more freedom to just add this, or you can just create the same to-dos for example, if you always follow the same steps for your project, you can create like 5, 10 steps for each stage of your project or something like this. So it's a little bit different because it's not the same way that the tasks are organized there, because they are actually records. It's just to-dos that you just type and they are there, so you can just follow and complete if you wish.
exactly. You can think of the to-do list as more of like a kind of like checklist of items of like really small subtasks of small items that you have to complete for a specific task. And like I said, it's repeatable or individually. So you can have like a to-do list with one-off items that you write all of them, or you could always have the same items every time that you create a record. But you can see that this is a very simple structure. It's title, the project of that task is assigned to, the owners, the to-do list, the attachments, and a checkbox field for done. So you can see here that we have a table for projects, and then we have two tables that are connected to those projects, right? So how would we get all of this information in the same place? So traditionally, in other tools, you wouldn't be able to, at least not in the same table. You could have different dashboards if that tool allows to pull information from different tables. Some of them don't, but usually you don't have a good way of doing that. So now what you can do here inside Ingester is that we have the table for projects, right? And then if I look at the end of year party, I can open up the record, so uncollapse this record, and get information from different connected tables. So we have a list here for expenses. So you can think of this as sub items, but expenses of items. And then we have all the records that are connected to the end of year party. And then we have project tasks. You can see all the tasks that are connected to end of your party. And then I can keep opening up different information here. So for Zen Garden, we have different expenses and tasks. For office renovation, we have other records here. So for expenses, we have new sign, and for tasks, we have hire contractors. So the idea here is that we can pull information from as many connected tables as we want to. So this doesn't have to be a dashboard for budget. This doesn't have to be a dashboard for tasks. We can have all of this information at once showing in the same table. So for this template, what we have here is this table for planning. It's pulling information from different places. And then we have indicators for the total budget, the total expenses, which are all the expenses for all the projects, the available budget, and a chart for expenses by day. We also have filters, so this is dynamic, right? So if I only want to see projects that are ongoing, I can select this, and this is going to filter all the information here, the table, and you can see the chart and the indicators. We can click here to see only favorite projects, which are the ones with the star here. So as soon as I click it, it filters the table, and we can select a specific project. So if I want to look at end of year party, I can just select here, and it's going to filter all the information as well. And also we can create a new project here. So we have a super form for the project, and also we can add new expenses or tests directly from the table. So I'm going to, we've talked about the structure. So this is the structure, just showing again. We have this table for projects, this table for expenses, and this table for project tests. All very simple. The important thing to remember here is that it's crucial that you have the connected part of the table, right? You have to point a task to a project. You have to point an expense to a project. So this is the most important part of the template. As soon as you do that,
And in this case, it's really easy to know the direction of the connection because you will always have lots of different expenses for one project. So you always a kind of a trick to learn when to use the connected field is you always go to the n table. So the n table is the table that will appear more than once the same project because you need to select them. So it's the expense table that needs to add this field, and then you create a connection
exactly.
between the both tables. But you only added the field here on the expense table.
Exactly. If you look at the type of field here, it's a connected records N to one. You can think of N to one as many to one. So we can have many expenses to the same project. You can have many tests to one project. So the field is going to be created on the N table, like he said. So it's on the expenses table, it's on the test table, and so on. But there you go. So as soon as you have this structure, which is like 5 minutes to build it, you can start building the app. So what we're going to do here is create a new app page without anything in it. We're going to call this project planner, right? Going to assign an icon for it. So I'm going to search for a construction emoji. Here you go. Okay. So what do we have here? We have indicators, charts, and a table. So we're going to build the indicator. At first, it's going to be the easiest one probably. So it's going to be one for the total budget. It's going to be a simple indicator because I'm not going to have any operations equations here, right? So there you go. Here's the indicator. So this is going to be total budget, and it's going to get information from the projects. So I'm going to get here project cost breakdown. That's the name of the table of the project. And I'm going to get the budget field, which is the budget for all the projects. And I'm going to sum all the budgets. I'm just going to change the color here. So this is the color I want. I want a light green. There you go. So now we need a indicator for the costs, the expenses. So what we've already used for of the budget. So I'm going to create a new indicator. I'm just going to drag and drop it here. And this is going to be expenses. And I'm going to get this from the expenses table. And I'm going to look at the amount field, and I'm going to sum all of the expenses. And the color for this one is going to be a light red. So I'm going to save it. There you go. So we have total budget of 40,000 approximately, and expenses $7,000. So now what we want is another indicator to show the available budget, which is basically total budget minus total expenses, right? So we're going to use a complex indicator here because we're doing a sort of operation. We're doing a subtraction, right? So let's get this and name it available budget. There we go. So the operation is going to be subtraction. It's going to be first variable minus the second variable. The first variable is the total budget. So I'm going to do basically what I did before in the other indicators. So it's going to go to the project table. It's going to sum the budget. There we go. Sum all of it. And then I'm going to get the expenses and sum all of the expenses. There you go. And for the color, we're just going to leave it white because we don't want any borders or anything like that. So it's going to look like this. And there you go. So I'm going to do this. And there you go. Okay, so for indicators, we're good. Now we're going to do a chart for all the expenses by date, right? So we want to see when something happened, right? So at April 1st, we had 1,500 as expenses. So, okay, we're going to go back here to the project planner. We're going to get this information from the expenses table. We're going to call this expenses by day. And for the x-axis variable, so the horizontal axis, right, this one, we're going to get the created at field, or sorry, the date field. So the date of the expense. And for the y-axis, which is the vertical axis, is the amount. And for the legend, we're going to go with amount. I'm going to give it a color here, and I'm going to group all of this by day. There you go. So now we're going to save this. And what we're going to do here is just resize it and reposition it. There you go. Okay, so now we have the indicators, we have the chart of expenses by day, and now we're going to do the most important part of this live stream, which is the table with connected information. So we're going to get the standard table block, right? So it's the same block that everyone's already using. It's not a new block, it's not a new component, it's only a new feature of the same block, right? There we go. So this is going to be the project planning table. And I'm going to get information, first of all, from the projects. This is the main part of the table, right? So I'm checking projects here, and I'm getting the title field, the budget, the roll up with the total costs, the status, if it's favorite or not, and I can get description and attachments as well. And I can reposition everything, I can rearrange it. So attachments, I want it to be before status, and description, I want to be just to the side of the title. So there you go. Okay, so this is the main table, right? So let's just reposition it. Okay. Okay. So if we leave it at that, let's click on save. This is the standard table, right? So this is just how everyone knows how to use it. It shows information just from project plan. But now what I can do here is edit the table and go here to the bottom part of the setup and click on this, show connected records. So if I click on this, I can get connected tables. So we have expenses that point to projects, we have tests that point to projects, so we can get that information. So let's start with expenses.
And maybe you
As
have
soon
like
as I see,
5 different tables, but only two make sense. Then you just bring two of them. And as you're going to show here, you can also add filters. So maybe it's not relevant for you all the information. Maybe you don't care about expenses under $100. You only care about expenses over $100 because it's just too much clutter on your screen or on your app. Or maybe you want tasks that are only tasks that are not done, or only leads that are qualified, and so on. So you can add more rules here to make your work more productive as well.
exactly. So if we thought about this as instead of project and tests and expenses, if we thought of this as teams and like requests, then we could have all of the unapproved requests. So we could approve the request. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do here. So you can see here that I selected expenses. Then now I can select the relevant fields here. So I want to see the title of the expense. I want to see the date, the amounts, and that's all the relevant information that I have here, right? I could add filter. I can sort by something, so I could sort this alphabetically by the title. What makes sense to me here is date, so more recent expenses first. But I could also have bigger, the highest expenses first, right? So you can always change the sorting here. So I'm going to go by date, right? And then I can also select super forms for adding new expenses, for updating new expenses. I could block people from adding new expenses here. So there's a lot of customization going on here. But let's go with this. And now we're going to add tasks as well. And for tasks, I want the title of the task, I want the checklist, I want attachments, owners, and if it's done. Okay, let's save. And final part here, I want for all of my favorite projects, the ones with the stars, to be highlighted, right? So I can come back here to conditional colors in the table and say, for example, I want to color something dark blue if it's a favorite, for example. So let's get here, favorite is true. And you can see that it's only going to color the one that's marked as favorite. So let's click on save. And now you're going to see that we can open the record here, uncollapse it, and for the end of your
And
party, for example,
for projects, one nice thing to do is also like if you have a deadline, it could be just red for a project or yellow. So the project itself could have different colors depending on its status. And for favorites, one thing that I usually like to do is to rank or to reorder the records according to the favorite, because if you click, then it goes up, and then you have all the favors on top and so on. So it's, of course, you can also use in this way that you're showing. But given that you, or even like if you're more worried about budget than the due date, maybe budget is a better rule for showing colors than the due date, for example. So there are many different ways to do this, as Fernando is showing, like right now. If you order by favorite, it will just re-rank it and will make it easier for you to just follow the projects that you want to actually pin on top, or maybe highlight for some reason. Maybe you are the owner, so you want this on top, and so on.
exactly. So there's a lot of different types of way that you can customize this. And one other thing that you can do, maybe you don't want the borders of the cells in the table here. So you can just disable the grid line, and there you go. So maybe this is a little more pleasant for you. Some people like the grid lines. it kind of depends on the type of information that you're showing, right? So there you go. This is the dashboard. You can see it's exactly the same as the other one that we've built. So what we're going to do now is create the superform, the filter, and the menu, right? So first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new superform. So this is the superform for creating projects, right?
It
There
could
you
it
go.
could even be like a public form in this case. Maybe you have a client. Every demand from your client is a project, for example, and you could send this link. Or if it's internal, you don't need this to be public, and then you can just use as a project, as Fernando is showing. But there are more than one way that you could just use maybe the same form and maybe different forms for each situation.
Exactly. So I'm just going to create the superform real quick. So there's a form for projects here. And then I select the fields. So maybe I want title, description, I want favorite. I can always rearrange it. So maybe favorite here up top, it's going to reflect here, right? Let's see, budget, status, and attachments. Maybe status is the last thing, right? There you go. So this is the form for creating new projects. There you go. And now I'm just going to give it a title bar, mainly to look a little bit more pleasing when I bring this all into the same app, right? So there you go. There you go. So now we can go back to the app that we just built, which is the project planner. And now we're going to do two things. First one, I'm going to create a search filter. And this is basically this that you've seen on the upper right corner of the app, right? It's the filter where I can select stuff. So first button is going to be status. So I want to filter projects by status. So I'm going to select the type select from field, which basically allows me to get information from a field inside the table. So it's going to be status inside the projects table, so I can select every status that exists there. And I'm only going to filter the table just for brevity, but ideally you would do this for all of the indicators, right? So as soon as I select the status, it's going to filter by status this table here. I have to change the color. There you go. Also, we have a button for favorite, right? So I only want to see favorites. And I'm going to select checkbox because the favorite field is basically a checkbox, right? It's either marked or unmarked, so it's the same kind of stuff. And I'm only going to get records where the favorite is true. So let's filter the table by the field favorite, right? And last part, I'm going to get the project. So maybe I want to see things from a specific project. If I have a lot of stuff, maybe I want to select just one. I'm going to use record ID basically because record ID allows me to select a record from a different table. So basically I'm selecting a project from the project table. So here you go, project cost breakdown here. And it's going to filter the table down here, right? So let's create this and see how it goes. So if I haven't messed up, here it is. So I can select status. So only done. And it filter here. And only favorites. I'm going to favorite something. I don't have it right now. There you go. So if I click on favorite now, it filters for only favorite projects. There you go. And we also have here the project itself. So all of this is working as intended. So now I'm going to create a title bar.
And you could also have one that's for example, over budget. All the projects that are over budget. So it's with just one click, You can see all of them that are over budget. Basically, you can use formulas also inside Gesture, so you could calculate the current expenditures and the planned ones. If it's more than zero or if it's negative, positive, depends on how you want to do your calculation. Then if you click, it will only show that ones that are over budget, or maybe if they are delayed for some reason, or any kind of filter that you want to pre-program. You can use the filter magnet for this, or you can just use this for other reasons, maybe to check like dates and so on.
Exactly. So what I'm doing here, I'm creating a title bar for this app here. I've added a button to create a new project, and also I'm going to disable the standard panel of Gesture and get the new project form that I've just created. So when I click on that button, it's going to pull the super form and not the standard modal. And also I'm pulling the filter that I've created down here to the title bar. So I'm going to save it. There you go. So now everything is up here instead of down there. And if I click here on new project, it's getting the super form that I've created. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is create a menu here as a side panel. So I'm just going to customize colors. I could add a logo here or something like that. So for the bottom part, this one, and for the top part, I'm going to get this one. There you go. I want the new project to perform as well. And there you go. So this is the end product, right? So if I disable builder mode, this is basically what I had showed before, right? This part. So everything is working here. You can go to the super form just by clicking here, or go back to the project planner. And just one thing to show you guys, because I didn't show it beforehand. If I'm here in the app for the project planning, I can see here end of year party, right? So if I look at expenses and if I hover my cursor here, you can see that there's a plus icon here. And I can add an expense to here, end of year party. And this is pulling the standard model of Gesture, the standard panel, right? But this is also customizable. So what we're going to do here is create a new superform to add expenses, right? So this is going to be customizable as well. So we're going to select this, it's creating the page. There you go. So I'm going to name this new expense superform. And I'm going to edit this. So this is a form for creating new expenses. Maybe I don't want a description, don't want a logo, don't want a cover. So this is going to create new expenses, right? There you go. So what we're going to do is when we create a new expense, we're going to give it a title. We're going to show the project. We're going to select a date and an amount. I can customize it with inlines, for example, so we don't need a row just for date and another just for amount, so we can put it on the same row. And I think that's it. We don't need any other information here. So I'm just going to customize this, give it a little bit wider and a little bit shorter here. There you go. So let's click on save. And this is my form for expenses. So what I can do here now is go back to the project planner. And this is the last part. I'm going to edit the table, this one, right? And now if I go down here to the connected records part, I can edit the expenses part. And for record creation, I'm going to disable the standard form, the standard panel, and I'm going to select the form that I've just created. Here you go. And I can select the way in which it's going to open as well, like
And,
subject card.
and here what you're doing basically it's importing a super form from another app page. However, in a few days, we'll also have an easier way to do this. So we'll be able to edit and customize your form inside each block. So you don't need to go to another page, create this, and then import. So it will just be a little bit easier. However, it will still be possible to do what we just did. So you can also do the same process in the future if you need to.
Exactly. So if I look here at expenses, I'm at end of year party. I'm looking at the expenses. I can click on this plus icon and it got the super form that I've just created, right? So this is all customizable as well. And I could also do this for when I open an expense, create a new task, open an existing task. So all of this is customizable. We're not going to do all of them just for brevity's sake. But the idea is here. So this is how you would pull information from multiple places at once, right? So as you can see here, we have a table for projects. We have for a project, we can see all of the expenses and we can see all of the tasks as well. And we have the dynamic filters up here, right? So if I click on favorite, then I can look at Zen Garden, and there you go. So the idea here is basically if you need to get information from more than one place, you can use this feature, right? So it's very common to have items and sub-items for projects. So you have tasks and subtasks. But for example, one thing that you can do if you have like this 4 ticket system, you could have a table with all of your clients, and then you can see all tickets of that client. So you can click on it and see that they have like 10 open tickets or something like this. But also have, apart from the tickets, all of the invoices of that client and all of other things that happen to that client. So you can always pull all of that information as long as the information is connected. So once again, just to finish this off, you have to connect the information with the connection field. This is the way that you can tell the platform that this information can be used as a sub item. So, like we said before, the way to connect this is with the N-to-one connection, and you can think of this as a many-to-one connection. So we have many expenses to the same project, so the field is in expenses in the many part, right? Connecting to the one part. So this is basically it. Don't know if you have anything to add.
No, that's all. Like, it's already a lot for an example of a project. But as we said in the beginning, you can add lots of different stuff here if you need to. Your maybe your project needs a Gantt view, for example. It's an easy one that we can add this as well. We can add one for the project, one for the each expense, maybe, or anything that you want. You can have multiple of that. You can have more fields just like comments or checklists or any other kind of automation here as well to make sure that your project is going to be done and that people are going to actually add information and follow the instructions of your project. So that's the um, one way to do this. We are also going to make this available on the template store. So if you guys have any other questions or suggestions, bring to us, and next week we'll come here with another live building, probably maybe the example that Fernando just said, like for tickets or maybe a CRM or anything that can show you how it's important to actually connect our data in a relational database. Thank you guys. See you soon.